Counsel approached the bench.
You play to win. And I don't care if you don't have any win. You go play to win. When you start telling me it doesn't matter, then retire. Get out. Because it matters.
Pulls up, three-pointer. Bang! Bang! It's good! Wins the game at the buzzer!
You can't handle the truth.
All rise. Here comes the judge.
Order in the court. Oi, oi, oi. Conlan, Farrell, pleased to be back with you folks. Another edition here of Bench Points brought to you by Conduct Detrimental. Conduct Detrimental, you're a leader in sports law coverage. On today's episode, joining me to debate all the hottest sports law topics from Penn State, he's a Nittany Lion, the 3L, the former president of the Sports Law Society at Penn State. His opponent, David Steinberg, a little younger, 2L, and now the current vice president of the Sports Law Society at New York Law School. They are sharp, they are well-dressed, and they are ready to debate. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Sounds good, guys. Okay, so, let's get right into it. This show, we know the drill. 45 seconds is going to be on the clock to start. You're going to have a chance of making some opening remarks, then a 30-second rebuttal, 30-second counter finally. I'm going to award a winner with a point. Squeaky hammer will bang, and then we'll move on to the next one. All right, gentlemen, it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's start in Major League Baseball. The story breaking this past Friday that Los Angeles Dodgers pitcher Trevor Bauer will miss the next 2 seasons, and he will appeal the suspension, but as of right now, he's suspended for the next 2 years until the 2024 Major League Baseball season for the misconduct or the violation of the Major League Baseball bylaws. Bauer, listen, he's alleged to have done some pretty horrible things from what's coming out of these court documents and stuff like that. Let things shake out, let the courts settle what they need to settle. But the suspension, John Nucci, we're going to kick it to you first. 2 years, long time. Is it justified?
So, Conlan, as you mentioned, preface this, obviously what Bauer is accused of is terrible. None of us are condoning that, but we're talking about it because he was handed down the longest suspension in MLB history under their domestic violence policy, which, based on the information that we have and precedent of MLB, I don't feel is justified. As it stands, there are no active cases against Bauer, and this punishment is way longer than punishments for players who have actually served jail time for domestic violence. This is not going to be the rubber stamp type of NFL appeals process where it just goes right back to the commissioner. The burden is going to be on Manfred to prove that this suspension is commensurate with the offense based on precedent, and I just don't think he's going to be able to do that.
All righty, 45 to you, David.
So the MLB created a domestic violence policy that was adopted in 2015, and it actually does not require criminal conviction or arrest for a player to be suspended. I think this is a totally reasonable suspension. Since this adoption of this policy, we've seen a progressive hike in suspension time from 15 games from Stephen Wright in 2018 to Herrera's 85-game suspension in 2019 and free agent Sam Dawson's 162-game suspension in 2021. It seems as though the league's trying to take an aggressive approach to stopping this type of behavior and trying to make a real example out of Bauer. However, it's important to note that Bauer is appealing this suspension, so it is to be seen how long this will actually last. But, this kind of conduct isn't supposed to be tolerated, and to make an example of one of the biggest pitchers in baseball, I think that's the right move.
All right, John Nucci, 30 seconds now, your counter.
So you're right. Criminal conduct isn't required, but this is 243 games less than Domingo Germán's suspension. And Germán physically assaulted his girlfriend at a charity event and then in private again after the event. Bauer also has been maybe the most outspoken critic of Manfred in the past. So this suspension has a little bit of personal flavor to it to me. The most aggressive being in 2020, he went at Manfred for the MLB's proposed playoff expansion at the time. And the quote at that point was, "Your proposal is absurd for too many reasons to list and proves you have no clue about baseball. You are a joke." So to me, the suspension has some revenge to it, and I'm not sure he'll be able to
All right, Steinberg, round us out. 30 seconds to you.
All right, you mentioned the Yankees star that got suspended for an extended period of time, but this is a very fact-specific inquiry. Although other players that were accused of similar misconduct received less harsh penalties, One of the clauses in the policy that was passed in 2015 that I mentioned earlier is saying that you can't base the future penalties or the current penalties based on past wrongdoings. Because of this, it's hard to compare past suspensions to what we have in front of us.
But we have to compare because it's precedent, isn't it?
All right. Well phrased debates to start there. However, John Nucci, we're going to start point number 1 going to the Nittany Lions. Listen, David, you can't say that there's, again, having looked back at that, these guys all fall under the same exact rules. And it seemed that Manfred has a little bit of vindictive nature towards Trevor Bauer, especially with being as outspoken as he's been against the commissioner and kind of the new things he started to begin to implement in Major League Baseball. And look, nothing, again, condoning the actions of Bauer, but 2 years, significantly longer than we've seen for this kind of violation, this kind of behavior under this policy itself. So, John Nucci, 1-0 to you, sir. All right, Nucci, taken round 1.1. He will hold serve here as we move to our next question. The NFL draft this past Thursday through Saturday, it brought, a lot of new hope for folks, NFL fans like myself and the New York Jets, suffering franchises. But listen, novelty betting, like betting on the NFL draft, is only legal in some states. And New York, if you were going to take Sauce Gardner top 5, like I gave out on Twitter this past week, well, you wouldn't have been able to do that because it's actually not allowed. Draft betting on the draft, not legal in the state of New York. So why is that? And is that the right way to do things? Should their prop bets really not, novelty prop bets really not be allowed? John Nucci, make your case. You go first here, 45 seconds.
So, Conlan, these bets should be allowed. When the 18th Amendment banned alcohol, people didn't stop drinking. They just found other ways to do it. And these gambling laws are passed to regulate and control a market that is going to exist regardless. So when you ban betting on the draft, here's what happens. People just go to offshore accounts they find in the Caribbean or somewhere else to make the bet, or they text their buddies who are in one of the states where it's legal to place the bet for them. So they're not preventing anybody from gambling on these events. They're just redirecting the revenue to other states. And they're also losing engagement because people love prop bets and they make the games more fun to watch. They get interest from people who might not care about the game. So states are hurting nobody but themselves.
David, you're shaking your head. Tell us why. 45.
There's too much risk involved. I mean, currently there are 30 states in Washington, D.C. that allow sports wagering. Each state has their own set of laws governing what's allowed to be wagered on. When you introduce a novelty prop bet, such as what color is the Gatorade or who are the Jags drafting number 1 overall, there are too many people involved in these decisions or that have insight on what the outcome is going to be before that decision is actually made. This puts fairness, integrity, and everything else in jeopardy. Think about the NFL sideline. You have the ball boy, the camera crew, you have VPs of clubs, you have maintenance crews, you even have fans that pay exorbitant amount of money just to be there. By allowing novelty props where so many individuals could have insights into what the outcome of given bet could be, all you have to do is know the right guy to make a profit.
Nuccio, round us out, 30.
So I acknowledge that there may be people there, but states have safeguards for this type of stuff too. So the state agencies that regulate sports betting, they have those safeguards in place to catch those bets. So hypothetically, if I was say a broke law student betting $10 a game, and I had someone on the sidelines and I make a $5,000 bet that the color of the Gatorade is going to be blue and it hits, that immediately triggers in a lot of states, most states, I believe, and that gets investigated. Not to mention states allocate a big percentage of their revenue to problem gambling as it is, and not a small percentage. So this should be allowed.
Dave, deliver the pile driver, the kill shot, 30 final seconds.
You can't switch from talking about people going to offshore books to now regulations being stricter. You start off by saying that people that want to bet on these things are going to go to offshore books. Now you're saying that now there's strict regulations to ensure that you can't place these bets or they're going to be fairly placed. There's about 200 people on the sideline at each game. Whether, as I mentioned everyone else before, there's no way to make sure all that happens. It took them how many months to figure out that Calvin Ridley was betting on his own games?
All right, that wraps us. Listen, another well-debated topic out of you two gentlemen, and we're still going to be waiting for our first sweep because Steinberg saves himself, gets a point on the board right there, even at 1.
Finally.
Let me tell you this. I'm the type of guy that, listen, if I'm working for on the sideline with an NFL team, you can grease me with like $25 and I'll take a Snapchat video of what Gatorade they're pouring in that cooler. The odds that I'm on the sideline for a Super Bowl winning team, maybe not in this life, but the next, are possible. So we can all live to dream. But Steinberg, 1-1. Those type of props, I just don't think. I think there's too much gray area, too many people involved that, you know what I mean, could get the word out and allow people to take some significant action and make some significant coin. So even though people still do it, legalizing them on the regulated books like DraftKings, FanDuel, no bueno. 1-1. We can move to topic number 3. All right, Steinberg getting it back even at 1 apiece. Now we move into our third and final segment. Well, you've heard a little bit about this, and it's been across the headlines. Maybe you haven't watched the show yet, but right now HBO is running a series called Winning Time, which is in regards to the rise of the Lakers dynasty in the early 80s, featuring Jerry West, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, a number of players involved in their depicted in that series. Well, Jerry West, not too happy how Adam McKay chose to pick him. The show is based off Jeff Pearlman's 2014 book called Showtime. So listen, now the way that it's not a documentary, and that's what HBO has been staunch in their stance that, listen, this is a portrayal based on real events, but it's not word for word, carbon copy, what happened. They're not a documentary, and they've stated that. Jerry West files the defamation lawsuit against HBO. Does he have a case? David Steinberg, we're going to kick it to you. Our final topic here on Bench Points. Jerry West versus HBO.
There's absolutely no way that Jerry West has a case here. When you're a public figure, you have to expect some kind of pushback or some kind of criticism. Doesn't matter who you are. You could be the president of the United States. There's always going to be people that are critics of you. Not to mention, as you said before, the show starts off with a disclaimer that says this series is a dramatization of certain facts and events. Characters have been modified or composited for dramatic purposes. So they basically say at the beginning that this isn't an accurate depiction of who he is. And I mean, come on, he's upset about being depicted as an out of control, intoxicated rageaholic. Think about the show South Park, which has similar disclaimers that all characters in this show, even those based on real people, are entirely fictitious. If he succeeds in this case, that I would expect Paramount would be
45 Nucci.
The good news for cartoon characters is they don't have to worry about real life. And HBO is trying to rely on the argument that this is not a documentary and it's just a work of fiction, which apparently gives them a license to say whatever they want to say. So unfortunately, I don't think that's going to help them in this case. The depiction of Jerry West in this show is a just drunk, rageaholic lunatic, and simply calling that a work of fiction when it's not even consistent with the book it's based on, or accounts from players like Kareem, doesn't give them a free license to do whatever they want. At one point in the series, they even say something like, quote, "This is the real story of Jerry West, not what you've seen in the media." So it's kind of nonsensical for them to turn around and then say, well, a reasonable person just, would understand that this is not true and just a dramatization. So
round us out. David Steinberg, 30.
I'm not sure if you've seen the show South Park, but they have so many depictions of real life people as characters, but they still depict the people. You said that they're not fictitious, but they are. Everything that they said in these disclaimers and in these shows that we're mentioning, they're all fictitious characters that aren't based on real actual events. They're based on real people. I mean, if he succeeds, as I said before, there's so many different people and different organizations that are going to be getting calls because what are you allowed to say? What happened to the First Amendment where you're allowed to say whatever you'd like and not be criticized about it in a public forum? I mean, there needs to be malintent and there needs to be intent to harm this individual for it to be, a claim on defamation for a public figure. Because this isn't a documentary and the producers disclaim at the beginning of this, there's no chance that Jerry
Nucci, 30.
So for a public figure to prove defamation, they have to show actual malice. And I think Jerry West, based on how ridiculous some of these clips are, will be able to actually show that because the book, it is so inconsistent from the book, deviates so much from it that it's not just a dramatization. It's a conscious decision to paint Jerry West in that light. And for an average viewer that doesn't know him, they're going to come away from this show thinking that that's who he is and that's how he treats people. Not to mention, there is recent case law out of California that supports this decision and supports my point as well.
All right, Nucci, good right there. Before I end and award the winning point, the game winning point, let's take actually a look at a clip from episode 1 of Winning Time. And this is a scene that features the aforementioned Jerry West.
Pardon this French. Oh, pardon my ass, Bill. But I already got a point guard. I got Norm Nixon.
Yeah, you hate Nixon.
So draft me someone I don't hate for change.
He's a generational talent, Jerry. I mean, hell, he's the most exciting guard to play the game. Hell, since you.
Says fucking who?
Who? Me?
Here's what I'm
everybody.
talking about.
Fucking have them, coach, okay? Hey, Jerry.
Fucking quit. Done? I'm fucking done. I can't even play a game of fucking golf without you bringing up.
Does look like me.
I mean, Dave, you don't think this guy's a rageaholic?
Lakers, basketball legend.
Apparently, the book says otherwise.
I'm bullshit.
Considered a true gentleman of the sport.
I coach you again.
To everyone who does not know him.
I coach you again.
Doing
Look, I just want
And his
All right, and that's just about enough. So you can kind of see where I was leaving. It's going to be a happy day in Happy Valley. John Nucci, the victor on bench points here. It was a good argument, but
You need a recount.
again, not according to the book. It's based off the book. So you can't say it's based off the book and then completely paint him in a different light.
He's a
That's
book
not
was
how that
better
works.
guy. He's a book was better guy.
Oh, my goodness. So bad. Jerry West, you have a case. I mean, whether he wins or not, that remains to be seen. But John Nucci, you're tonight's victor here on Bench Points. Congratulations. So Jerry West has a case for defamation against HBO. We'll see where it goes out. But that doesn't end us. What always ends us is contempt of court here on Bench Points. Who's being held this week? Well, it's a little kind of combination. The NCAA. And then it's Isaiah Wong and players kind of like him who are demanding more money and bump increases in their NIL deals that were pre-structured before the season started. Look, I do not want to come across as saying, like, I don't want the athletes to get paid. I've been for that. I think, again, name, image, and likeness was a monumental step for the NCAA and its athletes last year. However, what it's begun to turn into is something that I can think to be permanently damaging to college athletics. And you guys feel free to jump in here. But Isaiah Wong on Friday, through his agent, now it comes back, he's redacted this statement that he entered the NBA draft with the option of returning. However, he would not return to Miami without an increase in pay from his NIL deal with Life Wallet. Jonathan Ruiz, the billionaire owner of Life Wallet, saying, look, I don't renegotiate. So you want to move, the door's that way. Listen, Isaiah Wong led Miami to an Elite Eight. Great basketball player, probably a really nice kid. But look, the greed and the self-centeredness and kind of I'm going to get mine mentality, I think, is tainting college athletics a little bit and the amateurism of it. Guys, the floor is yours. Give me 15, 20 seconds. Am I wrong here? Am I getting a little hot under the collar for the wrong reasons or what?
When you move to a bigger market, you got to expect more money. You're making more. The TV deals are bigger. The audience is bigger. The stadiums are bigger.
But then the grass is not always greener on the other side. And these kids who college for 99% of students is about education. And now education seems to be the lowest thing on the totem pole for these kids. It's, look, if I get NIL deal that's 15% higher at North Carolina versus Duke, I'm going to go there. Is that right? Is that the best thing for their future?
In my opinion, that was what the push was for NIL in the first place. Education was always on the back burner for athletes because they're traveling so much during their season. And so now that they're finally getting compensated for it, and that 99% that don't make it to the league, now they actually have some kind of income, going into the real world without much of an education, it makes more sense for them to be, demanding what they believe they're worth.
Nucci, finally.
Yeah, I think there's a contractual element to it too, because if you want to renegotiate based on how well you play, then structure your contract like that. Structure your deal like that, and then you'll have the opportunity to.
Well, the operative word throughout this entire process has been the Wild Wild West. So operative term actually is the better way of phrasing it. But we shall see. Mark Emmert, he's about had enough. He announced that he will end his position as the NCAA's president next year. So he's out. He's like, you know what? That's for so-and-so's to deal with, not me anymore. I'm just sick and tired. I gave you guys NIL, and good night and good luck, basically. So, well, that kind of wraps us ourselves as well. We'll do the Mark Emmert exit likewise. For Conlan, Farrell, David Steinberg, John Nucci, Bench Points presented by Conduct Judgmental every Monday. Thanks so much, guys.